The Princess of Wales, once a steady presence in the public eye, had vanished from the tabloids' gaze since St. Patrick's Day. The whispers were endless, fueled by the rare sighting of Prince William only once at a solitary event on March 27th. Since then, the couple had remained conspicuously absent. Speculation was rampant. Would the royal family lay low until Easter Sunday, only resurfacing when the public's curiosity grew unbearable? The tabloids certainly didn't seem to think so, for they turned to a familiar target, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. As the Sussex lives continued to swirl in controversy, the media couldn't help but rehash every past scandal. No story was ever too old, too worn, or too irrelevant. Yet, among the recycled headlines, one particular tale had a strange new twist. The Duke of Sussex had made a fleeting appearance at his father's coronation, an event fraught with tension and expectation. What was Harry doing, and more importantly, who was he talking to? The tabloids had their theories. It was a quiet march. The bustling headlines of royal events, red carpets and charity engagements seemed to suddenly lose their sparkle. The Princess of Wales, usually a constant figure in the spotlight, had gone silent. No high-profile appearances since St. Patrick's Day. The public speculated, was she taking a much-needed break? Or was this an intentional absence to divert attention from the royal family's ongoing dramas? Prince William, too, had all but disappeared from the public eye. His last event had been on March 27th, leaving royal watchers wondering if there was something more to their absence. Easter Sunday seemed the most likely day to see their return, but until then, the media could only speculate. In their absence, the British tabloids, desperate for headlines, began to turn to familiar targets, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. With their ongoing drama and their dramatic move to California, it seemed that every moment of their lives was fair game. The stories were old, recycled, the tension from Harry's exit from royal life, Meghan's strained relationship with the family, and the infamous Oprah interview. But it was a particular narrative that intrigued the tabloids this time, Harry's solo appearance at his father's coronation. Despite the months of media frenzy about whether Meghan would attend, whether she was invited, and the supposed unwelcoming royal atmosphere, the coronation passed in a haze of contradictions. Harry flew into England alone, with no sign of his wife, causing speculation to spiral. Why had Meghan stayed behind? Was it a statement? And what about Harry's attitude toward the entire event? He was there, but did he really want to be? The tabloids seized on this as a potential bombshell. What was Harry thinking as he walked into Westminster Abbey? The questions grew louder, and the media waited for answers. Harry's trip to the coronation was, by all accounts, an exercise in discomfort. Flying in solo, the media immediately latched onto the absence of his wife Meghan. Was she invited? Would she attend? The speculation reached a fever pitch as the tabloids argued over every last detail. Meghan's refusal to attend the so-called chubbly, playful jab at the event, only seemed to fuel the anger of the press, who couldn't fathom why she wouldn't bend to the royal family's will. At the coronation itself, Harry's demeanour was one of quiet detachment. His eyes scanned the room, and his lips occasionally parted to speak to those seated around him. Among the familiar faces, his conversation with Jack Brooksbank, Princess Eugenie's husband, stood out to a trained lip reader. According to their report, Harry was in a moody state, muttering words that echoed the frustrations of a man exhausted by the constant pressures of royal life. "I'm fed up with the way they treat me," Harry lamented, his voice barely audible above the chatter of the ceremony. Jack, ever the supportive cousin-in-law, offered a small, wry smile. "If I can make you feel any better, and even I can do it, it's not the quiet life, is it?" Harry shook his head, replying, "It's not an ideal situation." But then came the crushing words that would later echo in the press. "They don't care." The coronation of King Charles III was a day of grandeur, pomp and circumstance, yet for Harry it felt more like an obligation. His decision to attend the coronation had been surrounded by months of speculation. The media had feverishly debated whether Meghan would come, whether the couple was being snubbed by the royal family, and whether it was a wise decision for Harry to appear without his wife. The media's obsession with Meghan's absence grew so intense that it overshadowed the very nature of the event, a historic crowning of the monarch. Harry's presence, though quiet, was a marked one. His attire, a sharp Dior suit, made a statement, but his mood was difficult to read. The tabloids scrutinized
With Love,
his every
Meghan
movement,
premiered on
from the
Netflix
small
on March
glances
4th,
exchanged with
and
his
within
cousins
just 2
to his
days,
fleeting
it had
interactions
captured
with
the
various
attention of
family
the
members.
world.
And yet,
The Duchess of
Harry's
Sussex's
demeanor
lifestyle
remained
show
cool,
quickly climbed to the
collected,
Netflix
and
top 10 in the
surprisingly
US,
detached.
sparking
He
heated
wasn't
debates across
engaging
social
in the
media,
dramatic
tabloids,
spectacle
and trade
that the media had
publications.
hoped for.
The show's
that
mixture
alone
of
felt like a
cooking,
silent
lifestyle
protest.
tips, and
But it
heartwarming
was
family
Harry's
moments
conversation with
ignited
Jack Brooksbank,
conversations in a way
Princess
no one
Eugenia's
could have
husband,
predicted.
that would become
While
the focal
Meghan's
point of the
supporters
media's
celebrated their
fascination.
success,
A lip
her
reader was
detractors
enlisted
tried to
decode
sabotage
every
the
word
show
exchanged
with review
between the two
bombing
men.
campaigns,
What was Harry
reflecting the
saying?
polarizing
Was this a
nature
quiet
of her public
lamentation
persona.
about his strained relationship?
Despite the
with royal
negativity
family?
with Love,
The
the
words,
words,
as
as
revealed
revealed
by
by
the
the
lip
lip
reader,
reader,
were a
as it
far
reached
cry
the top
from
10,
what many
the
expected.
question on everyone's mind was,
Harry muttered,
would
"I'm
Netflix
fed up with the
greenlight
way
a
they
second
treat me."
season?
A confession
On
that
March
seemed to
7th,
capture
just
the
days
essence
after
of
the
his royal
overwhelming
frustration.
success of season 1
Jack,
with Love,
always
Meghan
the
received the
supportive
green
figure,
light for a
responded
second
in a way
season,
that many
one
found
that had
both
already been
kind and
filmed in
perceptive.
secret with zero
If I can make you feel
the
any
news
better,
was a
and even
bombshell,
I can do it,
and it confirmed
it's not
that
the quiet
Netflix
life,
was
is
all
it?
in on Meghan's
Harry's
lifestyle
response,
show.
it's not an
Meghan
ideal
celebrated the
situation,
announcement on
spoke
March
volumes.
7th,
Sharing
the public
a
had
teaser
never
video
seen
on
Harry
Instagram
quite so
that
vulnerable.
gave fans a glimpse
For the
into what they
first
could
time,
expect in
his
season
emotional
2.
exhaustion was clear for
The
all
teaser
to see.
highlighted the comforting sounds
By
of
the time the
cooking,
coronation
chopping
had come to a
vegetables,
close,
stirring a pot,
Harry
and
had
sizzling
slipped away
ingredients,
from the
all
fanfare.
set to a calming backdrop.
The ceremony,
of music.
designed to celebrate
Meghan's
his
caption
father's
added
ascension to the
personal
throne,
touch,
had felt more like a personal
ASMR
funeral
and
for
teasing
Harry.
fans with what
He was surrounded by family,
If you're loving
yet
season
never
1,
truly part
just
of the
wait
royal
until you see
fold.
the fun we cooked up.
A
on
quick
season
exit
2,
followed,
she wrote.
the Duke of
Further
Sussex making
solidifying
his way to Heathrow under a police escort,
With season 2
catching a
of
flight
With
back
Love,
to
Meghan set
Montecito
to drop
to be with Meghan,
The future
Archie,
of the show
and
seemed
Lilibet.
incredibly bright.
Yet it
In
was
the
not
end,
just his
With
hasty
Love,
departure that
Meghan
caught
isn't
the
just a
media's
show,
attention.
it's a reflection of Meghan's
According to
broader
royal
mission to
sources,
connect with
the
people.
king had been
Spread
deeply
kindness
disappointed by Harry's
and live life
refusal to
on
stay
her
for the
terms.
family lunch,
Whether
where
you
a
love
glass
her
was
or
raised
loathe
to
her,
toast
there's
Archie's
no
fourth
denying that
birthday.
Meghan Markle's influence
The king,
is undeniable.
often stoic in the face
With
of
Love,
controversy,
Meghan is
had
a
quietly
testament
hoped that
to
Harry
her
would attend,
resilience and dedication.
even if only to bridge the growing chasm
Fans
between
eagerly
them.
await what's next.
But Harry's absence,
And there's
spoke
no doubt
volumes.
Meghan will continue
The tabloids
to
had a
surprise
field
and
day
delight
with
with
this,
every season.
running headlines that questioned Harry's loyalty and his relationship with the rest of the family. Was he truly so disengaged that he couldn't even stay
Since
for a
stepping back
private
from their
lunch with
roles
his
as
father?
senior royals,
Or was this
Prince
a
Harry and
calculated
Meghan,
statement?
the Duke and
A
Duchess
silent
of Sussex,
protest against
have
the
faced a
institution that
unique
had
set
so
of
often
challenges.
mistreated him.
Their highly
The
publicised
coronation was
departure,
officially
dubbed
over.
Megxit,
The
thrust
kingdom
them
into the
crown.
centre of a media
The ceremony
storm.
completed.
Initial
and the
attempts
world
to
was
manage
left
the
to
narrative
ponder
relied
the
on traditional
significance of
channels,
this momentous
often
event.
proving insufficient
But
in the
for
face
Harry,
of
the day was
relentless
far from
scrutiny.
finished.
The
In a
couple
swift
found
and somewhat
themselves bound by
calculated move,
age-old
he
royal
exited
protocol,
Westminster Abbey
struggling
quickly,
to control the
almost
narrative
immediately
surrounding
heading
their
to Heathrow
personal
under
and
police
professional lives.
His departure
This period
so abrupt
highlighted the
sent
urgent
ripples
need for a
through the
fresh
royal
approach,
circle.
one that could
In a
effectively
matter of
navigate
hours,
the
Harry had gone from
complexities
attending the
of their
coronation of his
newfound
father
independence.
to boarding a plane back to
The Sussexes' early communication
The tabloids,
efforts
of course,
were hampered
wasted
by a
no
lack of
time in
control.
dissecting this swift
Statements
exit.
were often reactive.
How
issued
could
in
Harry
response
leave
to
so
damaging
soon?
headlines?
Was it
or
a deliberate
swirling
snub to his
rumours?
father's big day?
This reactive approach
And what about
left
the
them
family lunch
constantly
that
on the
followed the
defensive,
coronation?
struggling to keep up?
Sources
with the
within the
relentless
palace
news
had
confirmed that the king had
the
raised the
traditional
glass
royal
in honour
model,
of his grandson,
emphasising
Archie's
discretion
fourth
and
birthday.
formality.
It was a
proved
small,
inadequate
intimate
for the
gesture,
challenges of the
one that
digital
could have
age.
provided a moment of
It became
reconciliation
clear that a more
between father and
proactive
son.
and dynamic strategy
But
was
Harry
needed
had chosen to
decline
effectively
the
shape their
invitation.
public image
Was this a
and
protest?
advance their
A
charitable
message of
endeavours.
defiance?
The
Or was
couple's
it simply
initial
a
struggles
reflection
were
of
not
the
due to
emotional
a lack of
exhaustion that Harry had
Rather,
been
they were
carrying
bound
for
by
so
a
long?
system that prioritises
Sources
tradition over
close to the royal
family, who were
pressure
usually
to
conform
hesitate
to
to comment on
centuries-old
such
norms,
matters
presented a
whispered
significant
that the king had
obstacle
been
in their quest
genuinely
for autonomy.
disappointed by Harry's
Harry's absence.
Their experience exposed the
He was quite
limitations of the
disappointed
royal
that he didn't
institution's
stay,
communication
one
framework,
source
particularly in the face of today's rapidly evolving media.
The coronation was a significant moment.
This realization paved the way
and
for
he
a
had hoped
bold
for a
and
brief
necessary
reunion
shift in
with
their
his son.
approach to communication.
But as usual,
Their initial
Harry had
experience
chosen his own
navigating the
path,
media landscape
and the royal
as
family was
non-working
left to
royals
grapple with his rejection.
underscored the need for a change.
The story didn't end.
This realization
marked the beginning of a new chapter.
The trained lip reader's
One where the
interpretation of
Sussexes
Harry's
would take
conversation
control of
with
their
Jack
narrative.
Brooksbank had
It
become
was
the
time
source
to
of
embrace
much
a more
drama.
modern and proactive
According to the
approach
lip
to
reader,
communication.
Harry's words
One
weren't
that
merely
aligned
about
with their
royal
values
duties
and
or
aspirations.
family politics.
This shift
They were
signaled
about
a
personal
departure from the
betrayal.
constraints of
They don't
tradition,
care,
paving
Harry
the way
had
for a
said,
more
his
authentic
voice
and
tinged
impactful
with
public
sadness,
presence.
as if he had long come to terms with his place in the royal family.
For generations,
Jack, perhaps out of
the British
sympathy,
royal family
had
has
tried to
operated
offer
under a
comfort.
strict
I
code
haven't
of
time
conduct,
for that.
with communication
Not if it's
carefully
over.
controlled and often
But
shrouded
Harry,
in
ever the
secrecy.
realist, replied,
The
"It's
mantra
an
of never
eventuality."
complain, never
Was this a
explain
glimpse
has long
into
been
the
the
fractured
guiding
psyche of a
principle,
man who had long
even amidst
struggled with the
personal
weight of
attacks
royal
or
expectation?
unfair portrayals?
The tabloids
While this
wasted
approach
no
may
time
have served the
speculating
monarchy
about
well
the
in the
context.
past, it
What
proved
had led
increasingly
Harry to such a
unsustainable
dark
in the
and
age of
cynical
social
view of his
media
family?
and 24/7
Was this the
news
beginning
cycle.
of a deeper rift?
The traditional
or
royal
merely a
approach to
reflection of his
communication
inner turmoil?
relies heavily
The media,
on carefully
obsessed with the
curated public
Sussexes,
appearances
had a
and
particular
formal
obsession
statements.
with Harry's apparent
Spontaneity is
happiness.
discouraged,
While the
and
rest
any
of the royal
deviation from
family
the
languished
established
in the
protocol
limelight,
is often met
the
with
tabloids
disapproval.
couldn't help but notice
This
that
approach
Harry,
creates a
despite his
significant
strained
distance
relationship
between
with
the
monarchy
royals and the
had
public,
looked quite content,
hindering
at the
their
coronation.
ability to connect on
He
a
had
personal
attended
level.
solo, dressed to
In
the
an era
nines
where
in a Dior
authenticity
suit,
and transparency
and was reportedly
are highly
cheerful,
valued,
as he chatted
this
with
traditional
cousins
approach
and
can
distant
feel
relatives.
outdated and
Even more
infuriating to the press
The never
was how
complain,
quickly
never
he had left
explain
the event.
mantra,
The media
while
claiming
intended
that
to
his
preserve
swift
the monarchy's
departure
image,
overshadowed
can
the
often
very
backfire.
coronation of the king himself.
Remaining silent in
But
the
to
face
those
of
close to
criticism
Harry,
or
this wasn't
negative
about
press
seeking
can be
attention or
perceived
seeking
as an
approval.
admission of guilt,
It was
or
about
at the very
freedom.
least,
The
indifference.
freedom to leave when the
This
weight of the
approach can
royal
allow
duties
misinformation to
became
spread
heavy.
unchecked,
The freedom to escape
potentially
to a life
causing
offered
more
genuine
damage
happiness.
than addressing the
For
issue
Harry, the
directly.
monarchy was no longer a place
The
of
Sussexes'
pride.
experience
It was a
highlighted
gilded
the need for a more nuanced
and yet,
responsive
in the
approach.
absence of Prince William
one
and
that
Kate,
allows for
the British
clarification and
media could not
defense
help
against
but
unfair
wonder.
attacks.
Could this be the
The
beginning
traditional
of a new
royal communication
narrative?
strategy,
While
was
Harry
effective in the
reclaiming
past,
his life and
has
his
struggled to
happiness,
keep up with
while the rest of the
changing
family
times.
remained
The
mired
rise
in
of social
tradition
media
and
and the
obligation.
24/7 news cycle
The
have
real
created
drama
an
began
environment where information
when the lip
spreads
readers'
rapidly
analysis
and
of
public
Harry's
opinion
opinion
can
could
shift
shift
in
in
an
an
instant.
instant, made its
In
way
this
into the
environment,
tabloids.
silence is no longer
The
always
exchange,
gold.
which had occurred
It
as
can be
Harry and
interpreted
Jack
as
took their
aloofness
seats in
or worse,
Westminster Abbey,
an attempt to hide the
seemed
truth.
innocuous at first.
The Sussexes'
But as the
decision to
words were
deviate
slowly
from this
pieced
traditional
together,
approach
a
reflects a
deeper
keen
story
understanding of the modern
In the
media
lip reader's
landscape
account,
and the need
Harry's
for a more
words were laced
proactive
with
and engaging
frustration and
communication
sorrow.
strategy.
They don't care, Harry said to Jack, his voice tinged with the bitterness of someone who had been overlooked and mistreated for far too long. His frustration was palpable, and for the first time, the public saw Harry as more than just a royal figure. He was a man who had been pushed to the edge by years of pressure, media
Since stepping
scrutiny
back from
and
their
family
roles as
turmoil.
senior royals,
Jack,
Prince
ever
Harry
the friend,
and Meghan,
responded
the
with
Duke and
empathy.
Duchess of Sussex,
I haven't time for
have
that,
faced
not if it's
a unique
over,
set
but
of
Harry,
challenges.
with the
Their highly
resignation of
publicised
someone who had long
departure,
ago
dubbed
accepted the
Megxit,
inevitable,
thrust them into the
replied,
centre of a media
"It's an
storm.
eventuality."
Initial attempts to manage the
words
narrative
echoed in
relied
the
on
media,
traditional
and
channels,
speculation
often
about
proving
what they meant
insufficient in the
ran
face of
wild.
relentless scrutiny.
Was Harry referring
The couple
to
found
his
themselves
relationship
bound
with the
by
monarchy?
age-old
Had he
royal
finally
protocol,
reached the point
struggling
where he
to
was
control
prepared
the
to let
narrative
go of the
surrounding
family
their
ties
personal and
that had
professional
once
lives?
defined?
This period
The media
highlighted the
couldn't
urgent need
resist
for a fresh
taking
approach,
these words
one
out
that
of
could
context,
effectively navigate the
spinning them
complexities
into a narrative
of their
Harry
newfound
as a man
independence.
disillusioned with
The
the royal
Sussexes'
family,
early
a man
communication
ready to
efforts
walk away
were
from
hampered
them.
by a lack of
But
control.
the true story was more
Statements were often
complicated.
reactive,
For Harry,
issued
it
in
wasn't
response
about
to
defying
damaging
his
headlines
family.
or
It was about
swirling
protecting
rumours.
his peace.
This reactive
And that
approach
peace,
left
it
them
seemed,
constantly
could no
on the
longer be
defensive,
found within the royal
struggling to
family.
keep up with the relentless news cycle.
As Easter Sunday approached, the
The
traditional
royal family's
royal
public
model,
appearances, slowly
emphasizing
began to trickle
discretion
back
and
into the media
formality,
spotlight,
proved
but there
inadequate
was a
for the
palpable sense
challenges
of
the
change in
digital
the
age.
age. The media
became
had
clear
long
that a
been
more
obsessed with
proactive
the royal
and dynamic
family's
strategy
strategy
was needed,
especially
to
when it came
effectively
to
shape
William,
their
Kate,
public
Harry
image
and Meghan,
and advance their
But now,
charitable endeavours.
with the Sussexes firmly
The couple's
entrenched in
initial
their new
struggles
life in
were not due
California,
to a lack of effort.
it seemed that the lines
Rather, they
between
were
the two
bound by
branches
a
of the
system
royal
that
family
prioritizes
were becoming
tradition over
more
transparency.
defined.
Harry's
Pressure to
comments to
conform
Jack
to
Brooksbank
centuries-old norms presented a significant obstacle, and the ensuing media frenzy had only
Their experience
exposed the limitations
of the Royal Institution's communication framework,
particularly in the face of today's rapidly evolving media landscape. it was liberation.
This realization paved the way for a bold and necessary shift in their approach to communication.
The more it became clear that
their
Harry
initial
had found
experience
peace
navigating
outside
the media
confines
landscape
of
as
royal
non-working royals
As the world
underscored
awaited
the
the
need
next
for a
public
change.
appearance of the Cambridges, it
This
was clear
realization marked
that
the
royal
beginning of a new
family's
chapter,
story was shifting.
one where the Sussexes would take
Whether for
control
better
of their
or worse,
narrative.
one thing was certain.
It was time to embrace a more
narrative of the
modern and
royals
proactive
had
approach to
irrevocably
communication,
and the
one that
Sussexes
aligned
were
with
at the
their
centre
values
of
and
this new
aspirations. This shift signaled
As
a
the
departure
royal
from the
family's public
constraints of
appearances
tradition,
slowly
paving the
resumed
way
in
for
the
a more
weeks following
authentic
the
and
coronation,
impactful public presence.
one thing became clear. The world of the British monarchy
For
was
generations,
changing.
the British royal
Harry's
family has
departure
operated
from royal
under a
life
strict
had opened
code of
a new
conduct,
chapter,
with communication
one that
carefully
seemed more
controlled and
focused
often
on
shrouded in
personal
secrecy.
happiness and less
The mantra of
concerned
never
with condition.
complain, never explain
The
has long
Sussexes
been
were
the
living
guiding
proof that it was
principle,
possible to
even
leave
amidst
the royal
personal
family
attacks
and still
or
find fair
unfair
portrayals.
portrayals.
While
The press,
this
of
approach
course,
may have
couldn't
served the
resist
monarchy well
continuing
in
to
the past,
speculate. It proved increasingly
Were Harry and
unsustainable in
Meghan
the age
truly
of
happy?
social media
Was
and
their absence
24/7
from royal
news
life a
cycles.
betrayal?
The traditional
Or
royal
was it a
approach
bold
to
step
communication
toward independence?
relies heavily
And what of the
on
rest of the
carefully
royal
curated
family?
public appearances.
Would they ever
and
fully
formal
embrace the Sussexes?
Spontaneity is
Or would the
discouraged,
divide between
and
the
any
two
deviation
branches
from the
of
established
family
protocol
continued?
is often met with disapproval.
As Easter approached,
This
the
approach
royal
creates a
family's
significant
public
distance
appearances resumed
between the
the
royals
undercurrent
and the
of change
public,
was undeniable.
hindering their ability
Harry
to
and
connect
Meghan had
on a
carved out their
personal
own
level.
path, one that was no
In an
longer
era where
defined by the
authenticity
monarchy's
and
strict
transparency
rules.
are highly
And in
valued,
doing so,
this
they had
traditional
created
approach
a new
could feel
reality,
outdated
one where
and
freedom,
out of touch.
peace, and personal
The
happiness
never
were the
complain,
ultimate
never
goal.
explain mantra,
For
while
the first
intending
time
to
in years,
preserve the monarchy's
British royal
image,
family was
can often
faced
back
with
a
a
future where their narrative
remaining
could
silent.
no longer be controlled. The Sussexes had written their own story, and whether the monarchy liked it or not,